And I was like, I'm going to have acupuncture today. And you're like, let's talk about death. And I was like, fuck. Hello, and welcome to the Weeder Life podcast. I'm your host, Erica Weederlight, and I am the CEO and founder of Weederlight. I help humans who feel inadequate, broken, self-conscious, and shamed around their sexuality to reclaim their aliveness, their power, and to have a renewed relationship to pleasure while preparing themselves to feel hella confident to date others and themselves. AKA, I'm guiding people to live their #best lives. I have to give you a fair warning. I do unfortunately swear like a drunken sailor, so if you do have little ones by you, just be sure to pop in some earbuds. All right, friends, let's buckle up and let's rock it to this week's episode. Okay, everyone. Hello. I am so fucking jazzed because I have one of my great friends. Like, I all day was like, ooh, I get to talk to Poe today. I am so fucking excited to have one of my amazing friends on the podcast today. To me, Poe is just the icon of doing the work. She's someone I've always looked up to. She embodies the work. She does the work. She is just, I just fucking can't wait to have an amazing conversation with her today. And just giving you a little baby cliff notes about Poe, and she'll obviously tell more of her story, of course, because it's her story. But my guest, Poe Hung Yu, today is just a fucking rock star. And I love her. Like I said, I love her so much. She is everything to me. She's been so many things to me. She's been a friend, a guide, a healer. But her work is intuitive healing. She's a teacher. She's a phenomenal holder of the darkness, of the light, and she mixes beautifully the erotic with pleasure, with Chinese medicine, sensation-based alchemy, and inner child work. She's the fucking real deal. Poe, I'm so happy you're here.
Hello. Wow. My head's like...
I'm like, blow it up, baby. Blow it up.
Thank you so much for that. That was really sweet.
It's true. And it's funny because I was like, I just knew as your friend, I was like, I need to have this human on this podcast because no shit, like you have been a guiding light for me for this work in many different capacities. Like you show the fuck up all of the time. And to me, I've always seen you being like, ooh, this is painful, or I'm going through the trenches, but I'm going to do the damn thing. And so I just want people to know you because you're fucking amazing and I'm obsessed with you. No big. No big.
No big. I just had a flashback, actually. I used to treat you with acupuncture as well.
That's why I'm like, we have been through like many different lives in this short friendship. You know what I mean? Like we've done the deep work of pleasure work, but then you also helped me so fucking tremendously through the acupuncture as well.
Yeah, that was the great time when I once lived in New York City, but now I'm a Caribbean girl.
This is a total fucking sidebar, but isn't it crazy? I thought I would never leave. So it's so interesting. Like we were so in New York together. Like we were so doing that thing. And now we are both so gone. So it's so interesting how like where life has taken us. That's a sidebar. That's wild. You know, doing the work with you and watching you show the fuck up was so amazing, but also you holding space with the acupuncture, because it wasn't just acupuncture. I remember you pushed me to like deal with a lot of my demons. You're like, babe, hi. And I was like, fuck.
I remember that.
Uh-huh. And I was, cute little me. I was like, this is for pain management. You're like, you're cute. We're going to deal. You're really cute. We're going to deal with some bullshit.
That's hilarious. And it's so true because what I've noticed so often with patients, past patients and clients is that the pain, the physical pain, is directly connected to some kind of trauma or pain body that lives in the energetic system. And it happens time and time again. I can always help them backtrack it to something emotional based.
Well, that's what's so crazy because I remember, I've been to acupuncture before and it was so helpful. It was a great experience. And I remember when I got on the table with you, I was like, motherfucker, in the best way. Because I remember you would get, you'd be like, oh, in this part, you need to shed your relationship to death. Or I remember you'd be like, your relationship to addiction. And so it being on the table after getting these bombs of lessons, I remember I will never forget the day I was just sitting on the table and you're like lovingly like, can I add heat to this? And I just remember like melding because we talked about like addiction and my relationship to death. And then also we got these points in the body and I would always leave and be like, I feel high after doing work with you. But it was such a deep shedding. And I know you do that work still now, like you really do. You talk about embodiment work. I think this community throws out a lot like embodiment. And it's like, like, but you truly are like embodiment and let me teach you and hold you through that. And that's something that I can never thank you enough for. Like, I really appreciate that. Seriously.
It was such a pleasure. And I just can't fucking help myself. You know what I mean? I have 5 placements in Scorpio. So death and rebirth is just like my everyday. So, we just go there.
Well, the best is I remember so specifically, I think, such a basic B, like, I went to like Sweet Green and I was like, I'm going to have acupuncture today. And you're like, let's talk about death. And I was like, fuck.
Well, it was funny because I was listening to your body. So what I always tell people is like, when I was doing acupuncture, because that's not what I'm doing anymore, but like, and I still do it though with my clients, I'm a liaison between you and your body. Because a lot of times people are unable to connect with that voice that is saying this needs attention. And so it wasn't like I wanted to talk about death. It was that your body was asking for it and I could feel it intuitively.
I think that's why it hit so good because I was like, fuck, and I know me and you know me, like at that time I was dancing around, which is great. But I was like, let me talk about pleasure. Let me talk about money, which again, and we're going to talk about that. That's a huge component of your work, but I was dancing around that. And I was so glad you saw me lovingly and you're like, hey, this is fucking up for you. And I was like, damn it, it is up for me. But I wanted to avoid it. So like, I am so grateful that you didn't skirt around my shit,
Yeah, I'm glad that you were able to receive that. And, when we talk about embodiment, like you were just saying, a lot of times people talk about it in a way it's just like about moving your body sensually. And yes, that's part of it, but it's so much more nuanced and deeper than that. There's a whole range that embodiment, fits under. And, part of the work that I do around embodiment is also sensation-based, like you mentioned earlier, sensation-based alchemy. I haven't come up with a cuter term for it, but like
that's pretty cute.
Yeah, it's just it is what it is. It's like sensation is so potent, and it's the thing that many people avoid because it makes people want to crawl out of their skin. It's what people have labeled as anxiety. It's all these things and labels, but really what it boils down to is that there's sensation that they are uncomfortable being with and sitting with and feeling and holding space for. And so, the more nuanced part of embodiment is this energetic piece and the feeling of these weird feelings in our bodies, like imagine like if you found out somebody cheated on you or something, or somebody confronted you, a stranger on the street, like cursed at you, you start to feel maybe some heat, or maybe your chest gets tight, or, whatever the sensation is. And a lot of times people will do all these things to distract themselves or numb themselves to not feel it. And so a lot of the work that I do is holding yourself in those uncomfortable sensations. I mean, it's so much more than that, but that is a piece that is so important that I think a lot of people don't talk about.
I'm obsessed with that because I think that, again, I'm so grateful we are in this community, but you know the fucking deal. It's an unregulated universe. And so anyone could say, be embodied, be embodied, be embodied. And I have clients look at me and say, what the fuck does that mean? Yes, there is a space for sensual dance class. Yes, there is a space for yes. But I'm so glad that you kind of got to the nut of it. You know what I mean? Like you got to the meat of it. It is that sensation. And I'm going to draw a bridge and let me know, just talk to me. Like what came up for me about that was the sensation is I know for me doing this work, it's helped me sit better with my sensations. But before I would run to food or I would run to not eat it. Like, it was but we'll say food where I'm going to overeat, or I'm not going to eat at all. And I'm going to work out. And so I know that, we all can have a thing to numb, whether overworking, TV, this, that, addiction, pot, drink, we all have these things. And I know my mind kind of flashed. I know you're a huge fucking advocate for real body love. Because again, people are like, body love, body love, body love. And people are like, what the fuck does that mean? But you're a true advocate about deep, real body love. Did the sensation-based work help you get there?
Yes, that's part of it. I think the sensation-based work is so grounding. So like a lot of people their nervous systems are very out of whack. And so the sensation part can help to ground your system, but also to help you do alchemy work, like healing work around your trauma. But that's something separate. But another piece around body love is literally bringing a massive amount of compassion and practices to that, like mirror work. Like, let's just talk about like one practice. Like mirror work is so profound. And a lot of times people have a hard time truly being with themselves. So body love for me is about being present in deep approval for what is. Whether it's emotions or what you look like or how you're feeling, whatever the circumstance. Like my foundation is Taoism. So it's very much based on deep approval, deep level of presence or the flow of masculine and feminine energy. And so when I bring that in to body love, that means that I'm in this space of really, truly seeing myself as who I am, what I am. And that doesn't mean I'm bypassing any kinds of dark feelings or, quote unquote, negative feelings. It just allows me to bring compassion to that space. It's about holding space. I mean, ultimately, the bottom line, the way that I found love for my body was a level of deep fucking holding. And that requires like I said, presence and serious compassion, using your mind to focus on what needs to happen, not letting your mind lead, but using it as a tool. So there's all kinds of ways but yeah, sensation is part of how that happens.
You hit the fucking nail on the head because I'm like, what? I mean, there's so many reasons why I'm obsessed with you, but I think you hit the nail so deeply because it's like unapologetic holding of yourself. And I never felt bullshitted by you. You know what I mean? Like I could turn to you. I'm thinking even one day in Mexico and I said like, how are you? And you're like, I'm shit or so. And I was like, great. And I felt so, there was no bullshit about it. You know what I mean? Like, and here's the thing. It wasn't like, I feel like shit and fuck, let me get out of this as quickly as possible. It was like, I feel shit and I'm going to sit here for a moment and I'm going to be with it. And I think that's exactly why I love you so much because you embody your truth and you don't make it wrong. And you don't shame it or push it away. You're like, this is my truth right now and this is what's up. And that I think is such a key in the body love shit. You know what I mean? Like, because that part of the conversation isn't really talked about often.
Yeah. And I know this path so well because I hated my body for so long. And not only I hated it, but I was completely disassociated from it. From her. I love how the things that we go through in terms of like our lessons and our biggest lessons are the things that we are meant to teach. And so I'm a multiple rape survivor from my teens. And so I started gaining weight immediately after the first rape, subconsciously, as a way to protect myself. And so, I was sedentary for all my life. I never worked out hardly. And so it was just a whole process and decades of me creating an intimate relationship with myself. My program this one program is ending next week. And it's been so amazing because of witnessing these women start to fall in love with the body and connect with their body and really truly find intimacy with themselves in a whole new way. And intimacy isn't just about like sexual pleasure and, bringing in the pussy, that's part of the work too that we do in Come, but it really, you got to go into the pain that is present. It's this pain pleasure connection that is really, I think, so profound that if we allow ourselves to alchemize and heal the pain body, which pain body, for those who don't know, is old emotions that are stuck in the body. What happens is when that starts to heal, the energetics of it changes into light and power and and radiance. And so, and erotic energy, and so, I don't know what I was saying, but I get so
I love it. I'm like, yeah, like I'm on the train with you. I'm like, I forgot about the train. I forgot I had destination. But like, yeah, the erotic. Like I was with you on that fucking journey so hard.
But yeah, a lot of this has to do with like bringing so much love, because what I've noticed with women in self-help or self-development groups is that they're very much in their, like, I like to joke that like they're a floating head, it's like they're very much in their mind. They're very smart, intellectual. They understand all the things. They might have read a gazillion self-help books and they understand it. They understand why they are doing what they're doing. So that's not a problem. It's just they're not connected to their body. And that's for a reason. There's a lot of fear, a lot of lack of safety. A lot of women do not feel safe in their body. That's part of like why we do that work and Come in regards to going into their pain body, because then they can start to feel more safe in their body. And then that's why their erotic body can open.
That's, it's so funny. I've been talking about this a lot, that like we could spit out pleasure, 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 pleasure. So many of us get it conceptually, but it's like, try to land that in the body. And it's like, I don't feel fucking safe. Like we talked about, like maybe abuse or just living in this fucking society, that we get hammered. Like, and most of us live in a state of contraction. So asking someone to be in pleasure can feel like a violating act. It's like, bitch, no, So it's like, I think you hit the nail on the head of like, there needs to be safety. And I love that you go through have the conversation of pain and pleasure, because we've done this, we've done the more beginning work of this. And something I always scratched my head on a little bit and lovingly made fun of the community for was, I would hear a lot, that's not in my pleasure. And I'm like, oh, that's a little crunchy. So things that are confronting and challenging and we have to deal with, people be like, I'm not going to deal with it. That's not in my pleasure. And I was like, I think that God bless you, but I think you're using the tools wrong. You know what I mean? Like, so I love that you are like, hey guys, to really be embodied, to really have a gorgeous flowing relationship with the erotic, we do need to look at the pain, because that's a huge component of this.
The beautiful thing about embodiment work, the way I do it, is that the body is always communicating with us, always, whether like through sensations, through activations, being triggered in relationships or at work or whatever. So there's always material on
Yes.
how we can enter into the healing space, because there's always something that's activating us. And how I see it is like they're all portals. Maybe they're little portals or big portals, but they're portals to enter into. And so, this whole idea of like, oh, it's not in my pleasure, but it's like, but if it's present for you, like, are you going to turn away from it, or are you going to just look towards it, and it doesn't have to happen in an intense way. It could be very gentle, but the act of looking towards and not ignoring that it's there in itself is a powerful step.
Yeah, that's huge.
That acknowledgement of that, and that's the thing. Like when I work with women, I never have to go digging for anything, right? It always like when I worked with you, I could feel it arises once there's a container that people feel safe in. It's like, it just comes up naturally.
Yeah, that's so good. So if someone's like totally green, well, first of all, I would say do pose classes. That would be my first suggestion. But before that, if someone's listening to this podcast and is like, I want to be embodied, we talked about the sensation things. Is there anything else that you would suggest to help people feel safe to drop into their body? Like, do you have any like what I hate to say 101, but like kind of like easy, tangible tools to help people slowly start to have that relationship with themselves?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing would be sensation. Just start to notice like what sensations that you're having, at random times or just in bed doing a body scan. So just connecting with that part of you. So feeling that part, that would be one thing. And another, like I mentioned earlier, mirror work, like just start to be with you. And that's really the common denominator with all of it is being with you, connecting with your eyes as you look in the mirror and then stepping back. And when I say connecting with your eyes, I mean like really connect with your spirit, connect with the real you, the truth of you that lives in the body. And then step back and take off your clothes and stand in front of the mirror naked and take yourself in. Like really look at yourself through those eyes that you just connected with, right? And which is with love, obviously, because the spirit is just pure love. And I would say those parts that maybe you don't like or judge, put your hands on them and one at a time and imagine like all this love flowing through your hands and going into that part of your body and receive that love. And I would say make amends. Like thank that body part for what it does for you. For instance, if it's your stomach, you could say, thank you for protecting me all these years, because I didn't feel safe and this was my way of feeling safe. So thank you for protecting me. And then apologize. I'm sorry. I make amends. Like I'm sorry for treating you the way I've treated you, judged you, and all these things. So create a conversation with your body. It's really about communication. Like everything, even when in my program Coin, it's about money. It's about creating an intimate relationship, creating communication, creating a dialogue with the spirit of money or with your body. So it's about the relationship.
And real relationship. That I think, and it's funny, and I'll just jump to it. It's funny because you and I on the pre-call, I have so many thoughts. I'm like, I'm like, there's so many good things to say. But I'll go to this. You and I on the pre-call, we're going back and forth, back and forth. Do we want to talk about coin? Do we want to talk about come? Do we want to talk about coin? Do we want to talk about come? And isn't it interesting that both of those things are quote unquote so different because one is sexuality, one's money, but the thread lines are so fucking similar. And I love that you just called out real relationship. Like real, not just like, oh, I'm gonna hurry in the morning and put my jeans on and not really look at myself and I'm cute, haha. Like, and that avoid it. Like there's so much avoidance or, oh yeah, I have a good relationship with money. I have 6 figures in the bank, but it's like, you just fucking nailed it because it's like that real relationship with like, I'm really communicating with money. I really have a real relationship with money and a real relationship with the erotic and a real relationship with myself. I love that you're teaching people to do that versus I'm quote unquote doing it, but really the underbelly is big avoidance.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in regards to money, like there's plenty of people who are abundant financially, but still have shame around money, right? So it's like, okay, so you have a shitload of money, but you feel guilty about having it, or you feel like you always need to rescue people with your money, or, you have like, there's all kinds of stories that can happen, even though you have a lot of money. Just because you have money doesn't mean that you are, you have this amazing relationship with money. So, the external, it doesn't fulfill, it doesn't satisfy. It can add, to your life, of course. But if the internal is off balance and there's these beliefs or, behind it, like you said, in the underbelly, then, your subconscious is always going to lead you. Like, that's what I think a lot of people don't realize. Like, all the things that are living in the darkness, quote unquote, whether it's like your mind, your belief systems or the pain body, it's always going to show up in your life. Like, I don't give a fuck who you are. Like, you can't outrun that shit. You can't outrun it. And so my principle of living is like, I'm just going to face it, I'm going to face it and see what happens. It's a level of like exploration. Like, that's the way I like to do it, is like, there's a level of play, adventurousness, it's like, there's this unknown territory. What's there? Let's see.
You just made that so much less scary. You know what I mean? Because I think, I look at you as very courageous and brave and all the things, but I'm sure someone listening is like, this person's amazing. I can never, because it feels so scary. And I think you actually just made it very safe, because instead of like this, like dark, like I'm going in, you're like, I'm going to get curious. And I love that you flipped it. Instead of like making it wrong or heavy or bad, you're like, I'm going to get curious and like, see what this is about. Like, I'm going to go there. And like, I love that you kind of gave that a little bit of light and like permission for us to do that without it feeling really fucking triggering and scary and unsafe.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only reason why I can do this work. I mean, that and all my Scorpio energy, but like
that's helping. The Scorpio's really helping the cause.
Yeah. And plus I have a Capricorn moon and rising. So, but whatever, but it really comes down because I am curious. Like, I want to know, like if something is arising in me, like some activation or like I'm being triggered in some way, like I want to know what's happening because it's me. Again, it's this idea of like, I'm only living with myself. This is the only body I have. This is the only life I have. And so I want to know what lives here.
Yeah. Okay, so silly question, just because I'm curious. So pretend you're in a situation and you're fucking hella triggered. What happens now? Like, if you're like, ooh, I feel triggered as fuck, you're like, it is up for me. What is your approach? Like, how do you deal with that? What happens?
Okay. So the first thing I do is I acknowledge it. So I'm like, okay, I'm triggered. Like, I bring a level of consciousness to the space where I'm like, okay, I'm fucking triggered. Why? Like, what is happening? Like, just again, bringing that curiosity. If I don't know, it's okay. I can journal about it. But truly, the number one thing I do first is sit with it. Like, that's the thing people want to escape. That's why people have a hard time doing meditation, is that they don't want to sit with the discomfort. So I will just let myself feel all of the activation. I'm not trying to get more activated. I'm just feeling what is and how it lives in my body. So I feel the sensation. Like if I'm pissed and I have like a heat in my chest, I'm going to just be with that heat. And, or if I'm feeling shame, like say shame arises in me, I'm going to feel how that feels in my body. And so being with it and feeling the emotions that come along with it, they naturally move on their own. The thing that people don't realize is because it's such a culture of fixing that a lot of people think that they need to do all these things, but really that can be the thing that takes them off the spot. That can be a distraction. So I'm all about bringing presence to what is in the moment. And literally just sit in it. And then it starts to dissipate. And the act of just holding space like that for yourself is an act of love. And so love starts to enter in. And then, after you sit with it, then you can start to write about it. Like, get clear what happened. What was the reality of the situation? Because so often in activating experiences, we can go into an illusion, fantasy, what's not true. And so you write down what's actually true so you can connect back into reality. And then you can start to see where you might have, what I do is, what am I accountable for? Where can I take responsibility here? Right? Because if I'm activated, perhaps I'm part of why I'm activated, right? I think a lot of people don't realize that everything is a mirror. So how can I take responsibility here for my part? And so I always bring that into the picture. And then I, feel into if there's something deeper that wants to be healed. And usually there is. And maybe it's available in that moment. Maybe it will come up another time.
That's so good. And I think, again, this is an unregulated world. And even if it was, like, it's so interesting because we have all these quote unquote tools, but most of the tools, hurry, you're in pain, get out, get out, get out, get out. And it teaches us run, run, run. So I love, like you said, you're holding space for yourself to really feel it, see it, look at it. And I love what you said about, like, why is this coming up? And, what needs love in this situation? And and the thing that I really loved was the story thing. Because especially when we're fucking triggered, this tail town, like and I'm thinking of myself, like the tales that I fucking craft.
Oh, girl.
And make up. Yeah, like they are, I'm like, oh, what happened? Like the tales. Like, I'm like, give me a fucking quill. I could write an amazing story.
I mean, it's like, and this is an important piece. I love that you brought that in because a lot of times people I work with, they judge the fact that they just created this whole storyline and, whatever is happening. But the truth is, if you realize the ego is doing what it does, it's not you. Like, this is just natural. This is human nature to create these stories. And so when we can see it for what it is, then it doesn't become so personalized. There's a way that you can separate the ego from truth. Because if you don't separate it, then you just go on the ride of the story, and that just can go until the end of time, literally.
Right. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm just like thinking all the things. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. Is this I mean, of course there's other tools and et cetera, but like, I'm assuming something like this would be a really good interrupter for anxiety.
Absolutely. This is huge. This is huge for anxiety. And what I want to say, which can help to answer that question, is that there's a difference between pain and suffering. And so to clarify, pain, the way I see it, is the emotions, the raw emotions that live in us that need to be felt and expressed and moved somehow, alchemized. Suffering is all coming from the ego and the storylines of illusion. And so anxiety, in a sense, is that you're going on that ride of the ego and not feeling your pain. So I would recommend to anybody who has anxiety is to start to notice when they feel the actual real pain, the emotions, the sensation, and be with that. And over time, the anxiety will start to decrease. It's true. I've seen it time and time again with my clients.
Yeah, no, I'm because I've had crippling anxiety years ago. I've worked through it and it still comes up, of course, and why this deeply resonates for me is it's genius because part of me still wants to feel the pain. Like, there's unpain I haven't felt, like, and it's there. So what so geniusly I do is I feel the pain of the stories I've created. So I'm not feeling the real pain in my body. Like, I'm not in my body, like feeling it and working through it and bleh, like fucking in it. But instead I know I need to feel the pain because there's something there. So I go off of the high and the kinkiness of feeling the pain of the stories I create. Because I know it's there, but I'm not dealing with addressing the real issue.
I love that you even can notice that. I think that in itself is huge, to be able to have consciousness around the fact that you're still in the story, that you're getting off on that piece and not touching the real thing. That in itself is awesome. What I would say with that is then just go into the sensation. I'm wondering, like, people who are listening to this now might be like, oh, like, that's like, what is that going to do? It just doesn't make any sense. Or it seems so like abstract or something. But the truth is, a lot of times those things that you're doing, like that tactic that you do, Erica, where you're going on the suffering, because that's suffering ride that you're going on, is to avoid feeling the sensations. It seems oversimplified, but really that's what happens. So I'm going to recommend to you to do that. And when you notice that you're doing that. And I also want to say that when we're in the pain and letting ourselves feel the true emotions, it only lasts a couple of minutes. So that's how you can tell the difference for those who don't have awareness around this. When you're in suffering, right, going on this ride, it can literally go on forever. It can go on for hours. It can go on for days, weeks, months, until you die. Plenty of people have died in suffering, right? But pain, you feel it, and people are terrified to feel the pain, right? Because they're like, oh, I'm going to get stuck there. That's a lot of people's fears, that they'll get stuck in that dark space, quote unquote. And like, really, it moves in just a couple of minutes. It may come back up again, most likely will. And that's okay. You just create the space to feel it again. But when you're fully feeling it, it actually isn't that long of a period that you feel it.
Right. And this is such a big conversation about, and this is a part, I'm sure for you too, why people come to my work is they're like, I want to feel alive. And I'm like, I could give you all the pussy rituals. I can give you, whatever rituals, body rituals, everything. But we have to have that space to fucking feel this shit, and even I practice this stuff. I teach this stuff, and there's still corners where I'm cute and I avoid, and so I'm so fucking glad we somehow got to this, because this was like the spiritual loving smackdown that I need. I'm like, yes. Yes, I forgot. Oopsies. Because I don't know, but I'm cute. Like I won't stay on here too long, but I cutely use the tools. We've been in programs where we have tools to move our anger and move our grief. And I'm cute because I'm like, I'm going to use this container, which is great. Thank God I have those tools. But I think something that I need to have more consciousness and awareness on is, yes, create space to have those tools to cry and grieve and all the shit, but also making it safe for right here, right now. That's where I buckle it up.
Yes. Wait, so when you say right here, right now, are you saying when you're activated?
Yes, because I think sometimes I give myself the space, but I think I'm cute. And I'm like, well, tomorrow I'm going to swamp, or tomorrow I'm going to do, S Factor, and I'm going to do a really angry dance. It's like,
so this is really important. I think this is so good. I love that you're bringing your own personal life into it, because I think a lot of people who are listening can probably relate to what you're saying. And so this is the power of healing, is that it's spontaneous. Like, this word has been coming to me a lot lately in my meditation, because we don't plan.
I want to. I'm a Virgo.
Right, okay. We don't plan. Like, you're feeling activated now. Okay, I'm going to plan to move it tomorrow at 3 p.m., In
an ideal world for me, I'm like, okay, at 3 p.m., what we're going to do is we're going to wear all black. We're going to listen to heavy metal, and we're going to move our shit,
I love that. That's hilarious. But yeah, so it's like, I think a lot of people do this, and a lot of times, and I'm not saying this is the case for you, but a lot of times it's a way to put it off, being with it in the moment that it's arising. And this is part of this conversation, this intimacy with your body. It's like your body is feeling it now. So in order to like really honor her and have reverence for her, let's be in it now, because you can't make up that emotion later on.
Yes. Yeah. This is such a fucking random tangent, but go with me. It's so funny. Again, someone that has a interesting relationship with food. Like I said, I've had, anorexia tendencies, and I also went toward, which that manifested in weird ways, and then also binge eating. And it's so funny because with both, but especially with the binges, I would plan what I was eating before. And that's such a fucking unserving to my body, which we know, but that's such an unserving, because if I was really present to here I'm with my body, what do I want to eat? How do I want to hold her? How do I want to serve her? I was counteracting that with my head, because I'm like, I know I'm off my diet today, so I have to eat McDonald's tonight. It's already decided, I've overridden her. And the same where I was going to the other side, I was like, I'm fucking starving. And I was like, it doesn't matter. You have to work out, so I was creating this in my brain as a way to override what the fuck is present right here, right now.
It's so true. I mean, that's such a great example because like the body, if we listen to her, then she will always tell us what we need, what she wants. Like that's what I always ask people like when I'm working with them. Like what is she asking for? What does she need right now? A lot of people don't actually ask themselves that because they're on like a automatic. It's like a car automatic, you know? And I'm like, actually stop for a moment and pause with yourself and ask yourself, ask your body, what does she want? Or what does she want to, what does she really want to eat right now? You know, I've had issues with food too. Like I was overweight and all this stuff and food. I just love food. Oh my God, I love food. But you know, so I can totally understand that. And that has been a process for me to like really connect with like her desire and being able to distinguish whether it's coming from an addictive or like wanting to numb space or from a place of like, this is actually really what she's asking for, you know? And you start to like, when you put your attention on this practice, you start to notice the differences.
And it's painful.
It can be, yes, absolutely.
And you're like, motherfucker, like I did it again. But it's so great that, thank God, I have that awareness. And I want the listeners to know that too. I'm sure you felt this. I never felt like there was an out for me. Like I was like, I'm always going to have a fucked relationship to food. I'm always going to hate my body. Like I remember specifically thinking like, this is just what it is for me. And so the fact that we both got free is a fucking miracle that I could cry over, you know?
Absolutely. And, you know, I can relate in that I never thought I was going to be happy. You know, like I had so much depression. I was like in serious despair for many, many, many years. And I just wanted to be happy at some point in my life. And I didn't know if that was possible for me. I was just like, that is my goal. You know, I remember being 27 or something years old. And I was like, okay, I just want to be happy. And then there was a point in my 30s where I just felt like, oh my God, I feel happy, like real happiness, not just like, you know, I've always appeared happy, right? You know, the external seemed a certain way, but inside I felt just loneliness and like shame and guilt and just like so much, you know? And then, so yeah, when we arrive there, then we're like, oh, there's another layer.
Exactly. It's true. Like, ah, shit. You know, like this just keeps on coming. And it's funny because we're talking about like this deep relationship. We'll say with the food example, right? It's like, okay, if I'm really in my body, like what does, you know, how does my body want to move? How does my body, you know, what does it, they want to eat today? Da, 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 da. I think that conversation also bleeds into the erotic, correct? Because I think we have a very 101 version of what the erotic is. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if we really know ourselves, that language becomes so much richer and real, right? When it's more internally led.
Yes, absolutely. And again, that word spontaneous is so important. You know, the feminine, the yin is all about spontaneity. Like it literally is about listening moment to moment. And so when we talk about erotic energy or sensuality or, you know, our sex, it's like, what is she asking for right now? Like, where is the energy? Where is the energy guiding me? You know, can I tune in into feeling her? And a lot of times, like you said, like people will imagine the erotic being something like, I think a lot of people might think it's like performance based, you know, it's like having to be like really loud or I don't know, like these ideas of what being erotic looks like. But the truth is erotic can be extremely subtle and quiet. It's this feeling of turn on and electricity, you know, emanating from your second chakra, you know, and it feels alive. You feel this aliveness, but I think the spontaneity is like the true nature of how it can open. And in order to be spontaneous, you need to be present to listen. Listening is the key to everything, I think.
Yeah. I was just going to say, that's the only way in, you know, or we could keep superimposing this fake shit, you know, of like, this is what it is to be sexy. I'm going to wear this lingerie. You know, we could keep superimposing that. But I think the deep, real erotic relationship, like you said, it has to be from inward. It has to be like I'm listening to the turn on, it's in my left
And let it
shoulder and it's
move
moving.
you.
Yes,
Like let
yes.
that energy move you. Like sometimes I don't always look sexy when I'm in my erotic energy, like this whole idea of the external and what things look like. We need to really erase that and focus on, does it feel good? Like, does it like really feel good? Not like some, superficial feel good. Like, do I feel it in the depths of my pussy? Like, do I feel it in my womb? Am I feeling my heart expand? Because a lot of the work I do in Come actually is connecting the heart and the pussy, because there's so much tenderness there. And I think people, when they talk about erotic, they think it's going to be this wild thing. And sometimes it is, but sometimes, so it could be like explosive, like a volcano shooting up, but it could also just be like lava, like oozing down, And there's a lot of tenderness and vulnerability in the erotic, and letting yourself see yourself and truly feel yourself in that way. So opening up the heart is a big part of the process.
It is, and I love that you name that, first of all, period, but also because that's not sexy. Meaning it is. When you know it, you're like, damn, that's the sexiest shit I've ever seen. You know what I mean? But that's not what's Hollywood, social media glamorized to us. It's just like, it's not even pussy, honestly, but it's just like, well, bam, like dominatrix, like very red roses, a specific, very specific vibe. And why I love your honoring that is it's really bringing a union together, and it's also true turn on. And I know we talked about this briefly, but turn on isn't just, and I always tell this to the clients and to my podcast, it's not just sexual turn on. Like, quite honestly, and it's funny, I feel tension during this conversation. I simultaneously, which is so interesting, feel tension in my neck because how I'm sitting, but I also feel deep turn on because I love you so much. This conversation is so rewarding to me. Like, so it's interesting that it's not from a sexual, sensual place. It's just, I feel alive talking to you. And I simultaneously feel pain. And that's okay. And that's okay. And I want to normalize that for the listeners, that it's not just, you have to be closed off and contracted and then you could feel turned on. It's like I'm having a fucking conversation with you via Zoom. And I'm like, I feel alive and turned on. And I also feel pain. And I could lean into that, and I can kind of go into that. So I just wanted to normalize how fucking nuanced this conversation is.
It's very nuanced. And I love that you brought that in because it's so true. The opposite things can exist at the same time, and they usually do. Like when I talk about Taoism, yin and yang, the feminine and masculine, it's not one or the other. It's this swirling together and constantly moving. And so it's the same thing with pain and pleasure, and we talked about that at the beginning, this intersection between pain and pleasure. It's like, they are like brother and sister. And so the more that we can expand either way, it helps to expand our capacity to hold, expand our capacity to feel. It keeps expand our capacity to receive and have and take in abundance, the whole thing. So it's like, that's the whole, I guess, intention in the work that I do, is that, yes, we go into the underbelly, but it's really about the expansion, and we just open and open and open that capacity. And the radiance eventually just wants to come out, because I think a lot of people want to hold that in, or scared to share their radiance, share their aliveness, because they didn't feel safe. A lot of the women I've worked with that feel that way. And I'm like, when you feel safe in your body, then that radiance comes out, and then your magic comes out, and then you can be in service in the world. And so it's this whole, domino effect that happens. But also, you're going to be in pain, like we all are. And so, no, not lying to yourself and being like, oh, it's got to be like one way or the other. It's like, no, they live together in constant motion.
Yeah, I thank you for normalizing that. And I think that's like I just want to talk to you for 25 hours. It's really annoying because I'm like, there's so much more. But I'm so glad you said that because I think so often, again, probably people that sign up with you, that people sign up with me and they're like, I want the fancy boas and I want it all to be turned on. And then they're like, you bitch, you're taking me through the trenches. And I'm like, I have to, I'm sorry. And of course they're like, I've never known myself better and I can hold and they're like, this blew it. And I'm sure the same with you. This blew it out of my expectations. They're like, this blew it out of the water. But we have this idea, I want to be okay. And the work that we did, I thought our teachers were on a pink cloud. I just assumed all day they were feathering themselves and people were feeding them grapes and they were on a pink cloud. But I'm so like, that's what I assumed. And I'm so grateful that you normalize this, that the pain is they coexist, and also to really feel that radiance, to really feel confident and embodied and like that magic fucking pouring out of your veins, you have to hold yourself through the shit. That's part of it.
Being human is beautiful, as painful as it is. And, pain is always going to happen until we die, but doesn't mean that we need to be enslaved by it, And so when we are clear that it's part of reality, that pain's going to happen, then we can actually face it in a way that maybe we weren't before able to, because of that normalization, it's like, it's just part of life. I think that really just understanding that deep, like letting that land in your system, like I'm always going to go through pain and that's okay. Let me learn how to be with it.
Ooh, exactly. Because it's a real tough life if you're just run. I mean, I come from a parent that's a very avoidant, and watching them run is very.
And I ran for a long time.
Yeah, I still run. I still run. Sometimes I'm with it. Sometimes I'm like, see ya. You know what I mean? Like it's not fun to run. So I'm glad that instead, you're giving vocabulary and a space that this shit's not going to go away, but I have the tools to hold myself through it.
Yeah. And what I noticed from my own healing is that, like I mentioned earlier, there's another layer and another layer. And so each time, alchemize more, there's still pain, but it touches something deeper. It goes to maybe a different wound that I didn't realize, just recently something came up for me and I was like, oh, wow, I did not expect that, it kind of came out of nowhere. But I was like, okay, I'm ready to feel this thing that I haven't felt, allowed myself to feel, because my inner child didn't want to feel it, right? She was so scared to, she didn't feel safe to. And now I'm in a space at 46, able to feel this peace. And so it's not that the pain goes away. It's just that we start to feel different pieces, and we get more practiced at it.
Yeah, you're so good. I fucking love you so much. I'm like, again, it's so funny. I was like, I might look at notes. I looked at none of the notes because I just, I'm like, fuck the notes. We're just jamming. We're running free. Yeah, I'm like, fuck the notes. Because I'm still like, there's so much talk about. I know people are going to be like, I fucking love Poe. And I'm going to be like, I told you so. Like, Poe is the fucking best. I'm obsessed with you. I want people to know where to find you and all that good shit. But before we wrap and get there, this is I'll just ask, is there anything else that you feel like you need to express, say, insight, wisdom before we talk about where people can find you?
I mean, I would guess the last thing I would like to say is that, I don't know, my dad's energy came in today while we were talking. And so I just want to say, my own gratitude for my father, who has been my spiritual mentor. He's a Taoist, and he used to be a Jesuit priest before he met my mom. And he is the one who really taught me how to be with what is. I remember I used to be addicted to weed. I still smoke weed every now and then. It's not like I'm not like I can't, whatever. But I used to literally be addicted to weed, and it was my escape mechanism. And I remember one day years ago, I was telling my dad, oh my God, I want to quit smoking. I feel so bad. I feel like I'm a bad person. And he said to me, the shame around doing it is worse than you actually doing the thing. And that hit me so hard. Like it landed in me. And I was just like, oh, okay. He just has taught me time and time again, deep level of approval and compassion and love of myself in all of my imperfections, in all the moments that I wanted to feel like I had all these feelings and I wanted to run from it. He always helped me come back to myself and be with it. And so I don't know. I just wanted to share that. I just love him so much. And if he hadn't guided me, I would not be able to do the work that I'm doing right now. And what I wanted to say earlier, I forgot, is that the women who are very much in their heads, they understand all the things. But the thing that I've noticed with working with people, it's the self-compassion and approval piece that is deeply missing in the work.
Yeah. That's because, it's an industry that is fantastic, and it also could promote shame and change yourself, and you need to be fixed. And yeah.
So I want to share that with your listeners. Like, if nothing else that you get from the podcast today, can you open up to being a little bit more kind to yourself in those moments and just be with your heart, like be with that love and feel and receive your own love from yourself. It's profound. It is. It sounds so simple, but it's not always easy in those moments when we're activated, right?
Oh, it feels like the last thing you want to reach for. So I really can't thank you enough. And again, I could talk for 27 hours for you, but I feel like there were so many bombs and so many gems, and I'm glad we went on no theme, but it's all was one theme. But you are such, like I said, you to me embody the work so fucking deeply. You walk the walk and talk the talk. And I knew that from the first moment I met you. I'm like, this person does the goddamn work. And I wanted everyone to know you. And I'm so grateful for you taking time and sharing with us. So where can people the age-old question of where can people find you? How can they, because people are going to want to get in your presence. So how do they do that?
Yeah, right now, Facebook and Instagram, I'm guessing you're going to write it down so they can see
yes.
it. Okay, because it's
yep. So it'll be in the show notes.
Yeah, because spelling my name, it's just a whole ordeal. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook, and I'm creating a new website, so that will be coming out soon. But I do have my Next Come program starting in March. So if anybody's interested, please feel free to PM. And yeah, I hope to connect with your listeners. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for coming on. I love you so much. I was like, oh, this is perfect. I love you. I'll talk to you soon.
Love you too.
Thank you. Seriously, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode and on this podcast journey. And if you loved what we talked about today and you know another human who could definitely benefit from what was discussed, I would so appreciate if you would go ahead and share this podcast with them. Don't forget, hit subscribe or follow so you never ever miss an episode. And the great news is you can always follow me, my work, my blog, my podcast on my website at www.wethelight.org. And hey, remember, life is so much brighter when we shine. I'll see you next time.